I would like to talk about today is a part of my thesis where I focused on global Englishes and English as a lingua franca, but in English as a medium of instruction. But in this workshop, I would like to highlight it in ELT context. We call ELT, ESL, and EFL context. So I would like to start with a small introduction about English. So as we know, English is considered the world medium of communication, and is spoken by millions of people and become the primary language of international business, diplomacy, education, health, and science, and technology as well. But unfortunately, ELT material, curriculum, and practices still view English from very narrow perspective, where they limiting their focus only to put the English to the ownership to Anglophone countries like United States, United Kingdom, and ELT practitioners, teachers, managers, and policymakers in non-Anglophone countries like China, Saudi Arabia, are considered the gatekeeper of native standard English, where non-native speakers should follow native speakers' language behavior. And the scholars of English as a lingua franca and the global Englishes actually recently noticed the mismatch between the native standard English that has been taught had been taught to non-native speaker of English in their education context, and the actual practices of English beyond the classroom, especially when they started to have interaction and communication with native speaker and with other non-native speaker. So, but we need to know about how ELT, EFL, and ESL view the world. Actually, how the way they view the world is because Castro has been divided the world in three circles. The first circle is inner, they call it native speaker or inner circle. It's like United States, United Kingdom, the Anglophone countries. And the outer circle is called second language speakers, like India, like Malaysia, where they have been in the past under British Empire. And the last circle called expanding circle, or also they have a name as a foreign language speakers, like China, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries. The inner and outer circle usually called as a norm provider. It means they provide the material, the ideology, the practices, the training to the expanding circle, where they called norm dependent. It means these countries in expanding circle are not able to teach this language or to design a course match to their local context, but they have to depend on inner and outer circle to provide this curriculum and the practices and ideologies. However, since the emergence of English as a lingua franca, as I can call it, ELF, and global Englishes, they take this, they lead crisis of this terminology, and they find it doesn't make any sense, because the cultural framework, when divide the words, is a kind of dichotomy and increases the discourse of racism and superiority, and which is they are against. But Grado, actually, in his article in 2006, although it is a bit old, but it is really related to nowadays, he asked a question about why global Englishes may mean the end of English as a second or a foreign language. Actually, who answered these questions? The scholars of ELF and global Englishes, like Jennifer Jenkins, Martin Dewey, Alisa Cojo, and Nicola Galloway, and many more, they are talking about what is the problem of ELF, EFL, or ESL, or ELT. And actually, after they analyze and know more about it, they find out these terms, ELT, ESL, and EFL, the curriculum practices, all of them based on three ideologies. The first ideology is the standardization of English. The second is native speakerism of English. And third is the ownership of English. So how these three ideologies fitted in ELT, ESL, EFL curriculum. So first of all, this material designed to learn English only to speak with native speaker, not with non-native speaker. That's why there's a lot of focus and emphasis that students should follow and native speaker and make native speaker as a model to follow. Second problem is, or a second idea that's implemented in ELT curriculum is emphasizing to learn the culture and society of native speaker and imitate their language behavior. And which is actually it really founded is in reading and kind of topics students discuss, which is not really related to the local context, but it's more about to appreciate or to prioritize native speaker standards, because as we said, Anglophone countries, they called as a norm provider. They are the one who provide this material. Another problem of ELT is using native standard English as a yardstick or measurement against other varieties of English. It means this especially comes when in evaluation in speaking, and you can find it in the rubric, where the teachers usually evaluate students very like in a very harsh way, that they have to speak like native speaker, but the teachers themselves, they don't speak the language and not native speaker, and they evaluate students very harshly that they have to speak like native. So if the students speak like with their influence with their L1 in English while speaking English, they deduct marks. And this is actually find it in IELTS exam when I took a course about how to teach and train and to use IELTS in marking, and they find out that the ideology they have it is standard nativeness, and ownership is planted like rooted in IELTS exam, and that's why students always complain that they never achieve marks because they have very high expectation. Another issue with ELT, ESL EFL curriculum is positioning learners as a linguistic tourist. It means they are considered outsider, they are foreigner, they are allowed to visit, to learn the language, and to know about native speakers, but they are not allowed or they have no right to own English. If non-native speaker wants to own English, they are expected to follow and respect native speaker standards and norms. And such a goal actually leads many students to struggle to be accepted in a target community. And this is actually, I can see it when many students want to study abroad, but they are very worried about, my English is not good. What should I do? So because this curriculum encourage, I mean, they give them this idea that you have to be native speaker in order people can understand you, in order to fit in that community. But this is not true. But unfortunately, this is the ideology they have. The final reason, the problem for in ELT is positioning learners as a failure. They always look at the learners, whatever they do, they are not native speaker, and they still are weak in the language, and they never achieve this language. So this is because all their problem is because they don't learn English because they learn English in the later life. They didn't learn English since birth. So this is kind of ideology that is fitted or is implemented in ELT. Therefore, ELT, ESL, and EFL is actually associated with a high level of failure and low confidence, and creates stress among non-native speakers to focus on grammatical accuracy and native speaker-like pronunciation. But also there are other reasons we need to change our view. from traditional English to global Englishes. So the first reason is that since the world has become diverse and connected, and most people become multilingual, so their focus started they wanted to have English in a more practical way, not as a model. So they started to shift their focus from accuracy to comprehension, to communicate effectively, achieve comprehension and intelligibility, and reach mutual understanding without following any native standard or norms. So this is a very interesting reason and very important. The second reason that we need to shift our thoughts to global English is native speakers become a minority in contrast to the high number of non-native speakers. Therefore, most interaction happened among non-native speakers themselves more than native speakers. And this is a fact. But ELT, they have this ideology that you learn English, the native English, because you are going to speak with the native speaker. And with the reality is totally different. The final reason to need to change our thoughts is since people choose English as a global language to be used in different domains, it's become very difficult to keep English as it is without changes in the way we speak. And this is simply because rather than being one version of English, now it becomes Englishes. And this English is developed due to the influence of other languages on English. So it's difficult to expect that students or non-native speaker to not to change English, because now English is out of control. So it's difficult to control, difficult to say, oh, you have to speak native English. And if we ask ourselves, like, okay, native English, what native English now? Because we have British, American, Australian, and also within these countries, also they have different varieties. Which English should be like English, the native English from north of England or south of England? Which English is authentic one? So it's English. There is no way to speak English actually. Actually, some native speakers and non-native speakers may attempt to control English, but when they try to do that, but they have to, it's mean that they try to arrest English development and undermine its international status. Therefore, English has become difficult to control and no longer belong to a certain nation or geographical location. It belongs now to everyone, and no one has the right to determine how we should speak it. And therefore, it is very important to change our way of teaching English rather than to depending on native speakers. Now we need to shift it to more global Englishes, to ELF perspective, because the way ELT, ESL, and EFL follow, it is not practical anymore, as inappropriate in 21st century. So let's see the facts. So actually, there are studies talk about, there are interesting data that some native speakers are also, they have grammatical mistake. So they always blame non-native speaker for being they don't speak good English or authentic English, but also native speaker also they have issue when they speak English. For example, I brought some example here. I will not discuss all, but I brought some. For example, if we have the first statement is, it is 5-year mission is to boldly go where no man has gone before. So I underline the mistake one here, to boldly go, but the correction is to go boldly. So rather than to put adverb before verb, it should be after the verb. So this is the mistake. And another mistake is, between you and I, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise were always going to separate. But if you wanted to a real English or authentic English, it should be between you and me, not between you and I. Another problem is, I always lay down to sleep after a big meal, and it should be always lie down, not lay down. So also these are problems that native speaker also have in a matter of grammar. So let's see now about a discussion. So I would like to divide the group. So 4 people in one group, and in 4 minutes, I would like you to discuss by assessing your own ELT context. So you have 2 questions, choose only one with your team, and try to answer the question and discuss. The first question is, how is English promoted for pedagogical purposes? Are any particular models of English preferred? Are any institution from Anglophone countries involved in ELT assessment? If so, how? The second question is, list students' typical departure of native speaker norms in grammar and pronunciation, which are seen as a mistake. Can you consider them as a local feature or variety of English, like Saudi English, Indian English, Chinese English? And what I mean by this question, I explain it here. I want to look at the common mistake that students produce, either in speaking or in writing, and look again and ask, and you can reflect and with people in the room, and ask about whether this mistake as a result of influencing L1 or it's a real problem, it's not of your context. So I would like to ask Tony if you could please have breakout room, please. So I think we talk about English as a lingua franca, and maybe some aware of what is English as a lingua franca, but others they don't know. So I like to explain what I mean by lingua franca. Sideover define it as any use of English among speakers of different various languages for whom English is the communicative medium of choice and often only the option. It is exactly like now. We are from different cultural background, and I'm sure we use English as a medium for communication, and it's the only option for us to use it. If I use Arabic, not everyone will understand what I'm saying. So it's not the option for us here. So we find English as a medium of communication. And also this definition includes native speaker. They are not excluding anyone. It's included native speaker in ELF interaction. So what is the characteristic of ELF? ELF value non-native speaker for being fluent multilingual speakers who have the ability to negotiate with native speaker and non-native speaker. And also ELF helps non-native speaker to retain their national identity in terms of accent. And this is which is against the ELT perspective. ELT perspective try to change the identity of the students to be like native speaker in order to be fitted in that community, in Anglophone community. But ELF try to reserve this identity, your national identity, the way you speak English. We will not change your identity because you speak another language. So it is to reserve your national identity, like I'm Arab Saudi teacher. English doesn't change my identity. In the beginning, I tried to be something like native, but then I find it okay. Why I have to speak or to imitate other identity, which is not me? So this is the idea of ELF. And also English lingua franca actually divided in 3 features. They have the discourse, spoken discourse, and as well as lexicogrammatical and pronunciation. So non-native speaker focus on intelligibility and mutual understanding rather than to focus on correctness, because native speakers think about less speakers deviate from native standard English, the better their chances of successful communication are. They care about to have successful communication more than to follow native speaker. Another thing about native speaker, they focus on linguistic adaptability and creativity. which is used as a pragmatic strategy for successful communication. So it means that they use different techniques to make themselves comprehensible. For example, they tend to have repetition during their conversation, also rephrasing. They have the ability to rephrase in different ways to make themselves comprehensible. Also, they tend to be more direct and explicit and accommodate themselves in that community. And usually they reach their message directly to the audience rather than to have a indirect way to reach their message. And this is what Moranin found in her corpus when she examined European students and teachers. Also in the lexicogrammatical, I mean here, the feature of ELF. So some students or some non-native speakers delete is in a simple present. For example, they said, she eat apple. And also they delete the article because they don't find it is critical, or maybe they don't understand it, maybe they don't have it in their language. So she said she eat apple and it's totally comprehensible. We cannot say it is wrong. It's as a message is delivered and we understand it. And also like deleting do or does in the question. For example, where you come from, because the idea of do and does is not exist in their mother tongue. And this is what usually do sometimes. I delete do and does unconsciously because it's not exist in Arabic. It's difficult for me to remember, should I use do or does or did, it's confusing sometimes. And also adding is in uncountable noun. For example, they say informations, because for example, in Arabic language, we have singular, plural, and dual. So having is, it's typical. For example, if you find Arab students, they use informations, is typical because we have singular and plural in Arabic. And also they say lexical, like about. For example, they say I discuss about, although there is no about. We say I talk about, but not I discuss about. But anyway, it doesn't make or change the meaning. For pronunciation, sometimes they don't say that the problem of the diphthong. They don't say thank you, the or the. They say thank you. So they replace it with a smaller to similar things so they can be comprehensible. Another example, they said, what time is it? They said what time. They don't have the W, and I remember that our teacher, she was saying what all the time, and by the time we understand she means what means what. So but this is reflecting on her L1 in English. And same thing with people and people. In Saudi Arabia, or sorry, in Arabic language, we have only one sound, which is ba, like book, but we don't have pa. And so sometimes, and I hear this by students say people, not people, and I don't consider it a mistake as long as I understand. Therefore, ELT scholars suggest radically reprisal of the way we taught English. So another, I don't know if we have time. I don't think we have time. We need to finish. So let's talk about the challenges of implementing ELF. Actually, there are studies look at what kind of challenges that ELF teachers struggle, ALT teachers struggle to implement ELF. And the first one is the concept of native speaker standard is so deeply rooted in ELT that may take very long time to change the belief and the practices of ELT practitioner and policymaker. And the second reason is some ELT teacher who support ELF conceptually don't know how to implement ELF perspective. They know about it, but they don't know how to do it. And this is, I think, because they have lack of support from maybe top-down agents, or maybe they are not really know how to implement it in the classroom. So they still they find it is difficult. Another reason is that international English language tests like IELTS, TOEFL, and ELT assessment up to now always idealize native speaker English as a model, and also the monolingual perspective. And this is the mistake. They are like Jenkins try to figure it out how to change the system of IELTS and TOEFL, and there is attempts to negotiate and talk and try to think about the replacement of IELTS, and it's I think it's neat sometimes, because IELTS and TOEFL is actually like commercial more than is ideology. And we will look at strategies. So we will give some strategies, okay, because teachers struggle how to implement it, but here there are some strategies maybe we can help the teacher. So we have suggested pedagogical framework, and I will focus only linguistic and cultural components. The linguistic one, the teachers need to let the students know about native varieties, non-native varieties, and localized feature. They need to have, for example, listening to native speaker, and also, for example, in my context, for example, Indian English, Chinese English, and Spanish English, and also to know about also the local features. So we will know, okay, I understand that we in Saudi Arabia, we say this and that. So we raise students' awareness about there is variety of English. There is no one way, correct way to speak English. And all this helps to have effective communication in the future. For the cultural thing, for the cultural component, also, we need to let the students know about the target culture and non-native culture, and the culture of or local culture of students. So in this way, students will understand and will raise their awareness about intercultural competence. They know about other culture, and they know how to communicate with them, know about them, not only limit their understanding only in one direction. So what can we consider as a native, what can we consider as like within this pedagogical framework? Seidhofer and Kocho and Dewey suggest some ideas. For example, to focus on effective communication rather than grammatical and lexical accuracy. Develop learners' ability to use English to accommodate themselves to diverse interlocutor and promote successful communication. Avoid focusing on typical language errors like the local features, without considering the sociolinguistic realities of teaching and learning context. As I said, I need to consider that my students, they may make mistake when they pronounce certain words, because I understand that this is a local feature. I cannot change it. We can help them to change, but we cannot force them because it's part of their identity. Also, finally, to set realistic objective when we design a lesson plan or curriculum, because it's become easy for the teacher to achieve their aim, rather than to be, okay, I want it to be like native speaker when they speak or when they pronounce or when they, or maybe to understand native speaker, and maybe they have difficult time to understand native speaker in audio listening. So we need to change to lower expectation, and we let them understand the context rather than to be fluent, and also to have correct or listen to only to native speaker. So to know more about English lingua franca and global Englishes, I would like if you like to go to Elinet website, and there you can find global English resources and reading group. There are plenty of articles you can download and read about them, or try to find it in the internet, but you can find it there. Also, you can be a member of that community if you want to receive some seminars and talking about ELT perspective or multilingualism. And also there is a free course for teacher about global Englishes, and they call it Changing English. And you can take this course. It's very enjoying, and it's about ELT and global Englishes. And also, before you take the course, from curiosity, you can have this questionnaire about what's your perspective. Do you are more about native speaker or you are more about L? And test yourself. It's 25 questions. And then you can take the course and enjoy the course. And this is my email. And this is references. If you want to know more about global Englishes, you can highlight Jennifer Jenkins' Global Englishes, a resource book for students. It's very, very easy to read, very easy to comprehend. So I recommend to read this book. And if you have any question or reflection, you are welcome. And I will post these links to you. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. And we can share your thoughts or ideas